and that happen.
So you're saying just near the sites, possibly, right, or within view of the sites?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because there's a lot of things out here that's way off the trails.
Thank you, Leonard. Lester also has his hands up.
Yeah, I wanted to share also another experience, so that might help you all in doing the final information as you develop these plans. When I went to Harvard, I took a class that was very fascinating called Sacred Space. And we explored how different societies understand their spatial relationships between human beings and between human beings and structures that they build, as well as how they congregate in different spaces. And many societies use these congregated sacred spaces for learning, for exploring, for developing means of achieving maybe more learning or economic means and things like that. So one of the things that I shared with them in one of my classes, because we had to give presentations, so I spoke to them about the development of a Navajo Hogan and how Navajo philosophies intertwine into how a Navajo female Hogan is built. And so I hope you all are also looking at from that type of aspect. And if you're not, certainly I would recommend looking at it from that perspective too. How that would manifest itself into the trail system, I think we're all open to creative ideas on how we can integrate sacred into a trail system like this. There was somebody alluding to the color manifestations of the different segments of the trail. That's part of sacred space development and use. And so perhaps I recommend you all look at maybe in your final review how that Navajo philosophy in terms of understanding from a cultural and spiritual perspective, sacred spaceness. And maybe that's something that somebody can try to explore and integrate some, at least the beginnings of that into it. And I think it's a very interesting, it can be a very interesting philosophical exploration of a cultural's use of space, the interaction between people. And just to bring it home, I mean, it's really fascinating, this COVID-19. Notice how the number 6 feet has been inundated with everyone. So it's a very interesting manifestation of a threat, a virus that has impeded onto people's spacing, the sacred space between individuals. So now we have developed an interesting guide that everyone, we need to be 6 feet apart. And if you go observe cafe settings or where people gather, it's very interesting how the awkward implementation of that guide, that 6 feet, because it conflicts with people's own personal space, the communication between people, and just the idea that there's an invisible piece or something is floating around invading your space. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring it back to more of a grounding it to today's situation. But I think it's a fascinating way to look at these types of trails, these types of ways that humans come together for learning, for exercising. And I think that's what this project is also about, the way at least I observe it and see it that way too. So I wanted to just kind of share that information also. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Sosi. And I'm a strong believer in reclaiming the space and I agree with you 100%, is how can we really incorporate these philosophies and how this is oriented. When I was doing the coloring and the labeling of the different trails, we started with Kia'ani Trail, which we designated as educational trail, which is our east trail. If you look at the map, which would be the white coloring, that's the association. As you go to the south, with the blue BIA track representing Hanagani clan, that's to the south. So even in the motion of how they were labeled, had that recognition of it. If somehow in that interpretation signs, or if somehow that's reinforced, ideally it would be something that's really ingrained within the trail, so it could be used as a teaching tool. So if they step first onto the Kia'ani Trail and they know that the trail is associated with bear, why was it associated with bear? Maybe you could get into opportunities of teaching about changing woman and how she formed the first four clans and why the bear was chosen. I think there's opportunities for us to use that and really leverage that concept of not only in relations towards each other, but in relation to space, time, etc. And I really liked how you mentioned the long walk on the Mesa Trail. And in that little crossover, we moved from Four Corners area to Fort Sumner, Bosque Redondo. Maybe there's an opportunity that we take, the 450 miles it was, and then scale it down towards our little cut across where the contemplative space is, and then the bench down there, Attila, on the lower half. Maybe we find out what, how is that distance comparable to the 450, and then scale it down. So you walk along and maybe you only walk about, 400 or 400 yards, but then you could say this is the equivalent of you walking from Fort Defiance to Gallup. That type of things I think is really important to what you're discussing. And it's good not only for the health outcomes of trails, the physical sides, but the mental as well. How could these be used as healing? How could they be used as a way to reclaim identity? I think the forethought in this trail system needs to be from the onset and when we're putting this together, because it's going to have such an impact. And it's really going to distinguish this trail from what they're doing in Cuba or what they're doing, at Denahotso, I'm not sure. But those things I think are what's really going to distinguish our trail from others.
Those are great ideas.
I know we have just about 30 minutes left. Can we as a committee kind of finish our connectors? I know we have that route from the elders. How do we get to BIA to TP? Do we, reinforce that sidewalk that goes towards behind the Elder Center, which goes to the post office, which then links over to TP? Can we identify the main nodes? I really like Mr. Sosi's recommendations of having something up at ODY and then the hotel. Do we need one down here by BIA track? Those types of things I think is what the last things we're missing. And then we could then transfer this into a work plan that we can take around to get funds and community support.
I think we can develop something in that area as a connector between the different two trails there by accentuating the rug auction site, because the old elementary school, which was since demolished, but there's a trail that the new school has developed. There's a nice little trail system that they've developed there. You could go by there and then designate a placard there that talks about the rug auction site. The current rug auction site is at the new school, which is right across from the BIA. So I think that there's an opportunity there to tie those two trail segments with a new one that talks about the rug auction.
Mm-hmm.
So the rug auction is, I'm sorry, I missed part of that. I was trying to get I got a main node put in over here.
It's
this kind of area.
It's where the connector from the Elder Center to TP was kind of coming down.
Oh, okay, got it. So the rug auction story could be in here somewhere? Or further down?
Well, it's to that building right there.
Say that again, Daniel?
The segment that you have there, the yellow one,
Yeah.
that kind of parallels, I think, now where the BIA is, looking to the west there, and then the new building of the school there. That's the new building. That's where the rug auction happens right now.
Okay.
And then the old rug auction building is a little bit north where the bus building, the bus shop is right now. That's where the old rug auction was for a long time until they replaced the school. Then they made that into a bus shop building area. So that's, I think that somehow needs to be designated along their trail that was the original rug auction site.
So somewhere in these grounds here, huh?
Yes.
Okay. So other main nodes. So was there one by the, we had one up here by the main node kind of connecting the hotel in this area. And that could be a connection this way to the interpretive system, possibly. Was there another main node? Dan, you have any other ideas for a main? Is the chapter house a main node?
Yeah, it seems to run through there. Or we were talking about putting a parking at the west end of the BIA track.
Right.
Where people could just access, especially, in times of different weather. If it could be kind of in the corner over there, and then that BIA track could then lead you to education, or you could go towards TP. But we're talking about possibly in that area, having some parking where we could have a gateway towards this system.
So you think the main node in here somewhere or this area?
Yeah, something just kind of entering it from that end. That way we're attacking it from the north by the hotel, from the west by the ODY, and then right here. And then we're talking about at the base of TP2 with that additional parking. If we're staying consistent with our idea of 4, which is aligned with the culture, those could be our 4 main gateways to the system. And then the nodes would be like the places along the way. Like Chapter House could probably be a node. NTU would, I imagine, being a node. The spot by the rug auction would be a node. And then ODY possibly. Well, that's the gateway, but the node by the house, I'm not sure. Those types of things. And, by all means, more people kind of chime in too. Because the big thing that we were talking about is that, we do have a lot of people that just use these trails to get to bashes or get to the elementary or get to the flea market. Where could these nodes be placed where it helps keep eyes on the street so there's not any unwanted activity happening, where people know that there'll be people passing so they might not be drinking or whatever it might be. Those types of things I'm hoping can kind of arise from these nodes.
Interesting. Okay. So how do we identify some of these sidewalk connectors how do we ground truth those to make sure they're in actually okay condition, or if they aren't, how do we get those onto tribal transportation funding strategy so that can be addressed through transportation? Like, for example, this one.
Can we lay it out now? Just kind of, we see it in there, but when we do our group walk, you know, we can make those notes and then make that recommendation that we're going to have to put in something to Department of Transportation or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
And
that'd
that-
be a recommendation you make. Yep.
And I know there's different community objectives, such as lighting up these streets, that they've already been working towards and already have certain solar in place. But if we, you know, could somehow layer this trail system in and say we also need lighting for this, we might be able to provide more justification to get them.
Yep. If there's already a lighting plan, it'd be, I mean, there's two ways we could do this. We could take all the data here and give it to your GIS folks at the college to actually put it into the GIS system. And if there's probably already a lighting plan for the community, you could, that's another layer. So you can see where we need sidewalks and where lighting is planned and see if they align.
Yes. Because that was one of the feedback from the community is, you know, this needs to fit into the larger master plan for the community, not only for the chapter, but what is NTUs, what is IHSs. So we're kind of working cohesively, and I think the more we can layer these resources, the more likely it will happen.
I think one way to integrate more value into the trail system is by perhaps identifying places where, let's say, an emergency call can be made. Some type of, I don't know, some type of, I want to say a phone system, but I think that can add to the value of for anybody to use not only the trail system, but if there was ever an emergency, you know, somebody can call, hey, somebody fractured their leg while they were hiking here on Mesa Trail, and then 911, and people can respond to it quickly, save lives. You know, something of that type of nature, I think, can also be integrated, maybe at a very minimal level for now. I know that the state of New Mexico funds very projects like that under their capital improvement process that they go through every year. So perhaps if somehow that was another layer placed on this trail system and used to seek funding, that might be one way to do it also.
Yes, we had 3 comments about that I emailed in the notes about having a call box. There's a reference of how they have those little blue call boxes on college campuses, maybe something like that that's scattered out. And all of this really originated from the Crown Point Community Watch and Awareness Group. So safety, I think, has to be at the forethought of everything as well. So thank you for that. Anything else?
I
So
think
let's
that's,
capture, I want
I
to
think that's
capture.
a good idea. I think that's a good idea because some of these trails go along some steep cliffs, you know, especially TP trails on the east side. You know, you have some sheer steeps on that side, and even the west Mesa trails. There's some cliffs, so you never know. You're gonna need emergency access.
So one of the connectors that Mr. Sosi mentioned was the connector from the Wellness Center to other systems. And I believe we identified that this white polygon is the proposed community center, wellness center space. And next to it in this white outline is the proposed chapter house construction. And then we have here, that's all the,
I don't know if that's correct, though.
okay,
I think so that polygon that's white out there, that they have built the wellness center there. It's done.
oh, the
It
wellness
just
center
needs-
is done, okay.
So now they just have to find an operating entity, and I think there's some interesting internal tension over that. So hopefully they work that out. But the one to the lower left with also the polygon there, I don't know. I don't think that's the new chapter building. That's more, I think, either OYD or the high school expansion.
Oh, okay.
Where the new chapter is going to go is on the top right there at the old police department. Those existing building where the intersection of the two roads. Yeah, that's going to be apparently replaced with a new chapter house.
Uh-huh.
Right, Leonard?
Yeah, that's going to be demolished because there's a lot of asbestos, lead. It should be condemned now, but there's people still in there. They need to get out. The wellness center is complete. Right now, we're just trying to transition from a chapter to the Navajo Nation property. So once that's done, the special diabetes program is going to start operating. So I think
nice.
you may want to meet with them to see what kind of programs they have and how they can utilize the trails. The same with ODY, Office of the Net Youth. That's the one that's being constructed right now with the groundwork. They have a land tract that extends all the way south to where their trail project is. So those two entities need to be involved in this project because I know ODY wants to utilize trails down that area.
So we just have to negotiate with ODY, if this is all their land here, negotiate how we get a safe pathway from the wellness center to connect down here to the Mesa Trail.
Right, and they're also working on a trail. I think they do have a design. That's what I mean. You need to get together and collaborate.
Okay. So we need to contact with the wellness center. See, the wellness center is working on a trail design.
Special diabetes program is going to be operating that wellness center.
Okay.
And ODY, Office of the Net Youth.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that are going to be utilizing that area on the south side of that baseball field for trails.
Daniel, maybe we can get a call together with them and share the map with those two organizations and kind of figure this piece out with them.
Yeah, I was hoping that this would be, once we get this in place, it could be used as that conversation starter. But Lester, if you could give me their contact number, I could reach out to them, or their contact information. Was it Vanjie or Virgie and Jimmy?
Jimmy Toledo and Virgie Nelson.
Yep, that's it.
So what I hope to put together from now until, next time we meet is a beginning work document that really displays and justifies why these trails are in place, which will go into kind of the health expectations, the economic implications, even getting down towards laying out, the surfacing for each of the sections, something kind of comprehensive. And I think once we have that, then we'll be able to really kind of let people know what we're doing. But this was the last stage in order to get to that point. So I think we'll be ready.
Yeah, we're in a good place though. As soon as we clean this up and put it together in a presentable format for public consumption, public viewing, maybe it's just like little called out boxes around the map on each one of the segments, following community consensus on this. And I think we've got to reconvene on the interpretive stories, or Leonard, your historic preservation group could make recommendations on what story should be told at each one of the sites we've identified. And then it's going to be really talking about management and maintenance strategies. You know, what's the role for the college? What's the role for the chapter? Is there a role for BIA? Is there a role for diabetes program? You know, what are the different pieces to make sure it manages, and how it's all going to get funded and overseen? So, because if you're going to go this energy, it's going to take some money and then people power to sustain and manage the system. So we'll have to have that conversation as well, and hopefully get, you know, agreement from different parties that are willing to take on responsibility for it.
Well, my suggestion, Attila, is it looks like the only connector we need is from TP to BIA loop area. If we could just put in that little sidewalk right there. And
Yeah,
then
there is a sidewalk shown here. I need to change the color, but there is one sidewalk already connected here.
I see. And then probably put an interpretive sign across from the chapter or the rug auction.
Okay.
And then from here, I could start putting together the plan. If we could maybe meet as a group in 2 weeks and talk about doing the walkthrough, kind of the boots on the ground last review. I think 2 weeks would give me enough time to put this into a graphic or a poster or something we could share to, you know, put a call out to the community. You know, what do you think? Are you okay? This is what we heard from you. Is it accurate? Then after we get that approval, kind of finalizing it, and then, you know, start those conversations with ODY.
Right.
Maybe they could join us on the trail walk too.
Yeah, you're thinking about a physical trail walk. So are you guys back open to having visitors within the community, or is it still closed?
I think it's open with the exception of 9 or 8 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Okay.
And no weekends.
Well, I think this would probably be a 2 days of work though, wouldn't it, to look at all this stuff?
Yeah.
So, well, I'm game for it, I think, and you know, before October's over, or, you know, do one week, half 1 week and half the next week possibly. So I'm up for that, because I think it'd be important, because we still got to do a prescription on, you know, even though we say we want an improved trail class 2, we got to define where the repairs have to be. So we almost need a prescription for every foot of trail where improvements need to be made and that sort of thing.
Right. I would recommend we possibly do that on the 20th of October, which would give me 2 weeks to put together the informational piece saying this is our final trail design. Here's some of the amenities, you know, mock up what that play area or that explore space might be, mock up what a signage might be about discussing the old boarding school gym or whatever.
Yeah.
2 weeks would give me enough time to mock those up, where when we meet on the 20th, we could kind of say, all right, you need to make these adjustments, or it's fine how it is. It's good to go to release. And then maybe do another week where we come back on the 27th, but invite people to also join us if they'd like to after seeing the trail.
Okay.
And so by the 27th, we should have our final word or final feedback. Maybe give it 1 more week after that from community input. And then if not, then just go ahead and crank out that action plan starting the 3rd of November, which I think we could probably have a good 45 page work plan in place, depending on how far into the future we want to talk about other things.
Right.
But I think that would be a good comprehensive document that could be produced hopefully by December, and then
Okay.
it could be used to go after spring grant funds or whatever it might be.
Right, right.
Leonard has a question.
I have a question for Superintendent Sosi. Lester, you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
We were entertaining the idea of using the old superintendent headquarters for a museum, maybe a visitor center. I did do a draft proposal, like you said, and I think Daniel was going to help me out. Are you still, is that still possible?
So certainly not. I know that there's been conversation around the use of that building. And I did ask for some type of plan. And I think we can continue to have conversation on that. But in recent weeks, we really amped up the focus on old buildings and liabilities and demolishing old buildings, old federal buildings in Crown Point metro area. So I think we have to really sit down and determine if those buildings could be saved. We have, there's several things going on at the same time. Part of it is because of the pressure we're getting from Senator Heinrich's office, responding to Crown Point chapter's resolution to address the old federal buildings. So you're kind of in an interesting, almost ironic position as a chapter official and then as a historian trying to save some of these buildings. And yet the resolution from the chapter is telling us to resolve and address these buildings. And of course, on the federal side, the primary question becomes liability. And if there's not substantial justification based on minimizing liability, those buildings probably will be demolished. I know that those buildings there are very fragile, but renovating it probably is going to cost a lot of money to restore those buildings. But if the notion is to have them demolished and then develop some type of replica on top of that, which meet all standards, that might be an option to look at. But as I say this to you, there's a lot of assessment going on right now. Some decisions will be coming down, I think, pretty soon on how we're going to address those buildings. So we probably need to have a meeting soon in listening and looking at your plan.
Yeah, I think from the chapter side, we did pass a resolution, but we identified some others that weren't on there. One of them was the old DNA building, which is a historical site, and the old police station, which is now being used behavioral health, and also the superintendent. I think those weren't in there. But yeah, I think we do need to get together and see just what we can do or how we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's a lot of conflicts there between two missions.
No comment.
So the other, Daniel, you put some great graphics in here on the signage. We might need kind of the same idea for, benches. Or in shade structures to give people ideas. We put a couple of real basic ones. I'm gonna stop sharing my tray. We put a couple of basic ones in our workbook that were just ideas, but they probably aren't appropriate for Crown Point and what we're trying to do here, especially with the designs you come up here. So I wonder if there might be some art students we could entertained to come up with some ideas for benches, whether they're sandstone or stacked stone. And the same with some other ideas. And then finally, thinking about public art. We talked about public art on sections of the trail. So what might be some ideas, whether it's the, using the welding class to do stuff, or otherwise, what are some ideas that might help people see the potential for art on the trail? So if there's any artists concepts for that we could share with the public for our draft plan, that'd be pretty cool. In Tucumcari, I was proposing that the welding class at the school there go to the junkyard. Exactly. Yeah, that's cool. Go to the junkyard and make weld rattlesnakes together for the trail, since it's the Tucumcari rattlers, as a piece of public art on that. But that's the kind of idea. That's a cool public art. And what is that? Either that or structures or statues or whatever. What are some ideas we could have along different sections of the trail?
Right, and I included this just to kind of stay in theme with our 4 original clans. One of them is associated with the porcupine. So this is something that can possibly be done as a form of art. There's another one right here. As we talk about exploring spaces, can we do some type of climbable bears, associated with the Ani Trail? A lot of these types of things, I think NT would be open to if we come with them. They probably won't do it now because their semesters are planned.
Yeah.
But if we plan for spring, it could be a way for them to apply their learning in the classroom towards something that benefits the community. So these are a couple of ideas. I included the first one just because our welding, they did get a new nice machine that's sophisticated enough to do cuts like that. So those types of things are on the table. I, of course, want to leave that up to the committee and the community, though, but I'm not sure if anybody has any thoughts about those.
I think those ideas are fantastic. Exactly what I was looking to kind of things to share. We could put in the plan as examples of the types of art that can help connect people to the landscape, connect people to their own community, connect to the sacred spaces. That kind of whole package we've been trying to get across in our project here.
And if you look into the original clans, I think that provides the opportunities to do those types of things. For instance, they were talking about the 4th clan, the one associated with the north. That was typically the weavers or the creative people within the tribe. So if we wanted to incorporate that type of storytelling or interpretation with the rug auction, that's where we could do those types of things. But each of those 4 distinct clans have different things associated with them based on Kiani's education, all those types of things. By looking into them and really understanding them, I think that could provide some guidance and towards what's featured on these trails.
Yeah, very nice. Okay.
Just to kind of visually represent what I'm talking about, this was developed by Tsehotsa Medical Center, where they talked about the 4 clans. So here we go, the Kiani is associated with the bear protector. Their gem was the white shell, known as leaders. Here's Hanagani, the cougar protector, turquoise, known as spiritual leaders. Maybe this is where the healing space takes place.
That's my clan group, Tochane Hanagani.
I like that. That's fantastic.
Kia'ani here.
Here we got Kiani's over here. So ideally, those types of things, maybe there's grandparents who could make that association with grandkids. We need to think about the intergenerational types of lessons, and little things like this add those types of lesson opportunities within it. That was kind of the thought behind it, and it did come from the community talking about how do we name this, how do we incorporate culture into the trail. So I'm not just putting this out there saying this is how you do it. It actually came from our work previously.
I know one of the, as a related idea, years ago, I helped fund and establish the Acoma Hiking Club, where Aaron Loudon was taking kids out and is using tribal elders there, Pueblo elders, to go out with the kids, and they were taking them to Elma Pais and working on, language lessons, traditional language lessons. But the cool part was that in the language classes, they weren't getting information on wetlands and wildlife and trees and basically the whole landscape. So his hiking club got so popular, and as it got popular, all of a sudden all the council members were sending their grandkids to the hiking club, and now there was, like, within the first year, there was a waiting list for a hiking club because of the language integration that these kids were getting, way beyond what the classroom was providing. So you're bringing up a really good point, how, again, it's tying the whole culture together. I love it.
Yeah. Well, my big thing with this and why I'm invested is that, we are a disadvantaged community in regards to the funding we receive, in regards towards, our history of trauma, etc. So if we do any type of development with NTU, any type of development with Crown Point, we have to make sure it's layered. So we are, checking off as many boxes of change that we can possibly do, so I strongly believe that trails provide that opportunity, not for only improving health outcomes, but increasing access to education, increasing access towards intergenerational learning, all those types of things, even getting into historic preservation and tying in towards that history. I think it's so important, in the land especially. So as much as we can with this trail, I'm hoping that we could really layer it. So we're, catering towards the local community, we're catering towards the hotel, we're catering towards not only the next 5-10 years, but 50 years down the road. So there's plenty of opportunity with this. So I thank everybody for participating. We're at the end of our session. Is there any other questions or concerns? I know we're talking about a funding opportunity, Attila, which was a $1,500 grant. I think those things are important to, let's go after everything, but then also we need little wins every now and then to show the community that we are doing stuff and we are making it a point to get this done. I see Mr. Sosi has a question.
Yeah, just a comment, closing comment. Really appreciate participating in this discussion and the work group here. I think that there's a lot of value to this effort and initiative. And it really does, as Daniel, as you talk about, an incredible history for Navajo people, the trauma that we've gone through, and at this point, it's amazing and wonderful to see we are doing amazing thing as Navajo communities and Navajo people, and I think this is an example of collective work from different experts and different people's experiences, and really manifesting into an interesting goodwill project, very spiritual in nature also. So I just want to thank you and everybody involved in developing this, and I hope you guys are documenting the milestones along the way, because it can serve as a model for other Navajo communities in Tuba City, Shiprock, Chinle, and I think that one of the traditional teachings that at least I've been told is set an example for others, your clan members, to see as a way to grow. So, and I think this is one way to look at it, that other Navajo communities can look at this as a model. And it's really, I think, fascinating and interesting and value added to the community. So I just want to thank everyone and allowing us to participate in it. And I think that I see a lot of promise in it. And more on the pragmatic level, if you need BIA's support through a letter for any funding opportunity, please don't hesitate to call on us, that we can work with you. If you need land status information and things like that, we're there to help. So let us know, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Daniel, this is Sheldon again from UNM. So I had a question about you had mentioned there's going to be like a walkability, and a chance to actually walk the trails. I think you said on the 27th. Is that open to everyone, or is that just with the ODY group?
We're going to do two. So the first one's on the 20th, which is mainly going to be this group right here. And that day I'm going to present, this is the final map that we came up with. Here's some mock-ups of what we discussed. And then that day we're not only going to walk, but then approve that and say, yes, we can release this to the public. And then so on the 27th, after releasing that map and then kind of putting the word out there, we're going to put out the invitation to anybody. If they want to participate in the second section, then they could do that then too. So hopefully we'll have two different sessions.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in attending one of those.
So maybe that's next step for everybody. We'll meet again on the 20th. And we can meet at NTU maybe at a 10 a.m. Would that be good for everybody? And then we could visit, I would say West Mesa and then Educational Trail. And then
Yeah, they're probably the most important.
And then maybe do BIA and TP afterwards, while providing the opportunity to bring everybody who's just participating in the second one up to speed with what was conducted the first time. But we'll have those 2 days. I'll probably send out some emails with some mock-ups of whatever I create from now until then, but kind of working in that way.
Okay, I like it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Please send the invite at least a week in advance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got you guys down now. So I'll make sure that we add you to our list. Anybody else? Cool. Well, again, thank you guys, everybody, for your input and your work. I think this is gonna roll out pretty quickly. So thank you all for your time and effort. See you on the 20th.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.